Good morning, good afternoon, good evening for everyone joining us from wherever you're joining us from. And thank you so much for making the time to be with us today. Welcome to our third installment for the year in the AI4D Gender Knowledge Synthesis series. My name is Mitchel Ondili from Women at the Table. We serve as a gender support team comprised of Women at the Table, Gender at Work, and the Ladysmith Collective. And this series of webinars is an AI4D initiative whose mission is to improve the quality of life for all in Africa and beyond by partnering with Africa's science and policy communities to leverage AI through high quality research, responsible innovation, and talent strengthening. So today we have an amazing topic. Today's topic is on the peer learning journey. To provide a bit of context, what peer-to-peer learning is, it's a method and it allows people, so people can include students or professionals or technicians who are involved in a similar process or problem solving to teach each other and learn from each other. So this is a way that you can challenge hierarchical ways of learning and producing knowledge. So it questions who is an expert, who is a non-expert, and it values the lived experiences of individuals as experts in that, right? And it also visibilizes different ways of knowing without locating any as more important than the other. Largely, it allows for the diversification of perspectives, the creation of networks and communities, and problem solving built from existing knowledge and experience. So, in today's session, we're going to discuss how peer-to-peer learning has been approached by some of the colleagues in the AI4D project. Four people will be sharing their experiences. Kemi Omotubora from EDUAI, Marie-Katherine from Gender at Work, Daisy Salifu from AI for AFS, and Caesar Wisdom Favor from Hash. So thank you all for being here. I wanted to start by asking what your experience has been in the peer learning journey and what exactly it is about this method that has surprised you in that experience. And I'd like to start with Kate, actually. If you can give us an example or an illustration about how this has worked for you and your experience of it and anything that surprised you along the way.
Thank you very much. So just to give a quick background, peer learning is a methodology that combines theory with practice. It emerged from Gender at working with BRAC in 25 years ago, and through that it's shifted. And this methodology is based on the fact that we know that gender training in itself does not change people's practice. Nor do tools. And so you need to create spaces for people to learn about how. And so this methodology combines three what used to be in-person workshops where peers explore what gender and inclusion and intersectionality mean to them from their it combines organizational learning and development methods. How do organizations learn? How do people learn with feminist practice, appreciative inquiry? And so AI4D we've been doing we started the method. We invited hubs to do it. They weren't forced to do it. And we've had 2 workshops, and usually it's combined with 3 workshops where it's creating spaces for people to critically learn from each other about what they're doing, learning by doing on gender and gender and inclusion. And we've done 2 workshops, and so the people that are invited today are from their hubs and their change team members. We create change teams, and those people lead a gender and inclusion change project that's niched in their hub's work. So I just wanted to explain that. And there's a lot of information on our website about it. But in terms of 2 examples that have been interesting, I'm going to talk about AI for COVID, which was another IDRC program that ended about 6 months ago, and some things that emerged from there. An interesting one is APHRC from Kenya. They developed a tool with stakeholders, with the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Gender and data scientists. Why would gender inclusion and intersectional data be important to national dashboards that are tracking COVID? And so they developed with the stakeholders a tool, and now they're translating that into multiple African languages. And so that's an example. That was a project that was produced through their engagement in the peer learning. And then I know I've spoken a lot. The last thing I want to say that I think is really important about, because you asked me the question, what surprised me about it? And I say how it touches researchers' personal journeys as multidimensional people. A lot of people that are in AI are scientists that are taught about tech solutions to development problems. And I think the peer learning practices gives them a language and humanizes, allows them to think about themselves holistically. And it can actually drive them to look for more integrated data, because often people want to better represent people that they're developing the AI tools for. And that's what I've noticed, is it drives them through the peer learning process. It drives them to then to go deeper into the data sets. So it's been I've seen that it could be very powerful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I think that has a very wide range of applicability pretty much everywhere. I think we could have multiple different projects that can just benefit from this process, and it would be interesting to see how that implementation might work. I think I'll move to Daisy, if you can just give us a little bit of context on what you think about your experience, and if anything about it has surprised you.
Thank you, Mitchel. I am coming from the hub AI for Agriculture and Food Systems, and I've been part of the peer learning journeys. And truly, it has changed the way I think about including gender, the marginalized, into the design of AI tools in agriculture and food systems. And what I've learned as a big thing is we need to be intentional. It's not going to work on its own. We need to be intentional. Right at the start of identifying the problem you'd like to solve, we need to be intentional to bring in those that don't have the voice. They have to be part of that. Otherwise, they'll remain behind. The gap will even be wider. If they were behind, they will be very far from this technology in AI. So we have to be intentional. Right now, actually, I'm in Uganda, Tororo. This is not my workstation, but this is where we had a group of farmers, the women, and we had also disabled who were having that interaction of looking at, these are cassava farmers, so we are looking at their needs. What would they like to see AI do for them? And then it starts from there. And then the researchers, we need to pick it from there. And then we design the AI tools together and the process together with them. And the conversation we had was very interesting. I enjoyed it because this is after we have had 2 sessions of peer learning journeys. Is it only 2? Not 3. But truly, it just, you need to be very intentional, and you create the space for the women. We had these women in a safe space, and they really just spoke. We just interacted and put down what they feel are the problems they face in their cassava production, starting from land preparation, the seed, the weeding, the management of the crop, and the harvesting, the marketing, and they would come up with what they feel AI therefore should do. And I see if we would pick it up from there, then come together, and of course we had to decide the solution. What then would we do to solve these problems? I just enjoyed it because intentionally work with these farmers who have lots of experience. Then the researcher is there to understand their needs. And then we sit down together and build something that they have already embraced. and you build it together and they give you feedback as you develop the AI tools, that's just wonderful for me, because really we need to be intentional. Otherwise, the women who form the bulk of the agricultural production in Africa, surely they need to be put on the path of adopting AI technologies. And therefore, design by inclusion as a concept that we have adopted, it's something that we have to embrace, and we definitely need to be intentional to include people who are marginalized and trying their best. We should be able to include them so that they are not left behind. Maybe I leave it there, Mitchel.
Yes, thank you so much, Daisy. I think that's an incredible example of a real participatory approach. And I'm so grateful for your comments. I'll move to Feva. If you can just give us a little bit of insight about your experience and if anything about it has surprised you. I think if we've lost Feva momentarily, then we can move to Kemi, if you're available.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon from Lagos. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, thanks very much. And thank you, Mitchel. So I'm sorry, I mean, I can turn on my video sometime later, but I'm having someone work in my office.
That's no worries, that's fine.
Yeah. So my experience on the peer learning journey has been one that I would describe as the way that I choose to put it is like a like you have both sole and shared responsibility for understanding the subjects, the issues that are being discussed, or that we are trying to resolve. And the second part is the diversity of perspectives that come into the peer learning, the peer learning process. So many things that I didn't know about, for example, other ops, what they were doing, or other research work, and how it was being carried out, that I didn't even care maybe to understand what the issues were. So being part of that process and listening to, different approaches that are being used, it's really, for me, helps me to kind of own what I know and try to make some progress with aspects that I struggle with, because I can see, how maybe others, their perspectives about certain topics or certain subjects, and, it usually is an eye-opener for me that these is outstanding for me is how we have tried to also incorporate this in our respective projects, or at least at the EDUAI hub. How we don't really have an hierarchical or a hierarchical structure that is, so we have sort of a flexible structure, but participating in this gives us more incentive, to sort of, anywhere we have a top-up approach, to step it down and make things even more interactive. And so, yeah, one way, for example, that we have used it is peer teaching or tutoring with every body on our project, all, whether we are PIs or research assistants, we try to actually embrace that approach of talking to each other and discussing the subject from the point of view that even though we have different knowledge levels and different disciplines and different backgrounds, but everybody has something to contribute to the subject. So I think what else was the question? Anything that surprised me, I think, is the ease with which you can actually understand things that appear difficult when you are in an environment where you're engaging with your peers. So yeah.
Thank you so much for that. I'll quickly check in to see if we have Favor with us. And if not, I think we can move on to discussing a little bit about the impact. So Favor, are you with us? All right, we can move right ahead. So I think based off of the examples that have been given, what I'm really curious about is from a process facilitator point of view, what do you see is the impact? And how does that change the way that something has worked or the way that research has been done? Because part of the peer learning journey is also to reflect on the way that you carry out some of these processes. So have you seen any impact in terms of how these processes are carried out and if there's been any change as a result? I think I'll start with Kate again.
Thank you. I think in terms of how it makes, the question is around how it makes people go deeper into what they're doing, or that's actually what I was thinking about. What makes peer learning particularly relevant is how because what happens, people, like some of my colleagues have said, there's this intentionality that you get, and something that seems difficult suddenly seems clearer because you're learning from your peers and you're being asked, because one of the things that peer learning does, it's a lot about asking critical questions around the how. And so I think what I've noticed in terms of the peer learning method is that it gives people the space and the motivation to go further in their work. Like Daisy talked about, consulting with women in Uganda around what they do and how AI might be useful. Now that's part of the research, but maybe there's something more intentional. There's going a bit further in how that's being done through the spaces of peer learning. We can never know exactly how that happens, but I can only just say that that I've even observed in AI4D this commitment to, and it's just the theme that I've picked for this discussion, is from an AI data scientist perspective, is that if part of integrating gender inclusion and intersectionality is saying, I'm going to question the data sets because I know that for this issue, the data sets that I have are not representing all the complexity of the people that are affected by this. Let's say it's in health, and I go deeper and deeper and deeper, and the peer learning space helps me to not give up, because to do that, it's a pain in the neck, right? As a data scientist, you could just create something based on the data sets you have. But if you're critical and you say, no, I'm going to keep on going, and you need to build trust, you need to convince people, right? Because people have different data sets. So I just want to say that I've observed that's something that I have observed, is this commitment. But there's a lot of challenges there where maybe the peer learning space might help. And what I mean by that is in another example, in another project, the data scientists were trying to connect with feminist researchers around gender-based violence, and they had the data. They had this integrated data that they were using, but it was difficult for them to connect with the feminist researchers that were actually working with communities where the violence was not being reported. And there was data there that they wanted to collect, and they wanted to find ways of doing that right. So I want to say that, the peer learning can create these incredible changes, but it can also raise some of the challenges and fallbacks. And it doesn't necessarily solve everything, but I think by having peer learning, it's the intentionality, but it's also the accountability as well, because you have people supporting you. You're not alone. Anyway, I just tried to raise a few questions with that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think now that we have Favor on board, I think I can move to Favor. So we're basically trying to ask, when we go through the peer learning journey, what do we see are the impacts, the effects that the work has on different teams or on different research projects, and how has it changed their processes and the way that they work? Sorry, Favor?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Personally, it has had a very big impact. First of all, when we began this journey, I never understood what gender equity and inclusion entailed, and its use in the building of AI. I was an AI geek, but I never understood the impact of considering GEI as we develop these innovations. It has changed the whole aspect of how I should approach developing solutions for certain challenges within my community. And not only that, as I speak today, I would like even to invite most of you for the first ever PLGEI session within HASH, and we are preparing it for 12th at 3 p.m. East African time. And the whole idea is to now get the technical people, because it has changed the whole dimension. I've realized that there are so many people, unknowingly, when you don't use a GEI approach, that you do not include in your technology you're developing, and it creates a class. There are those who benefit, and there are those who are totally left out by the technology. And this is a very dangerous thing when you do it. It means that you are trying to provide unknowingly or create an imbalance on who should receive a service without you knowing. So it's very, very important that you use GEI lenses to make sure that as you design a certain technology, let it be even for a specific group or for a general public, you are intentional on inclusivity of various people in their various categories. Let it be disabled people, let it be able people, let it be who their needs, set of needs are sort of unique, and given also the cultural diversity that we have within Africa, it's very important to take note of that as you develop such technologies, such that you are not changing the way of lives of people, but you are just making it better to live within their cultural settings. So that has helped me a lot to understand, and that it has affected a lot on how I look at digitalization of services, implementation of AI, and even how to give back to other AI enthusiasts that are coming up. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your insights. I think that leaves us with a lot to think about. I would like to move to Kemi.
Okay, thanks very much. So personally and for the team, I would say, and I want to leverage on part of what favor, as just mentioned, just that differently. For me, it's a faster learning process. I think it means that you can learn faster the things which this is perhaps, you know, talking more from a personal perspective, the impact that it has. There are things that I would not ordinarily be thinking about. I have a social science, humanities, legal background. So I think that the idea of, for example, responsible in AI, responsible innovation and so on, I thought, yeah, I have a fair, you know, idea about what this should entail. But, you know, being in the peer learning journey in that process, I could see the different dimensions and the possibilities that this kind of, you know, broad terms that I used to think that, oh, I have a fair grounding in that or a fair understanding. And I could learn faster because it was people who were deploying, building, designing. I was also listening to these people talk about their work. So I could see, for example, how this could have different interpretations depending on the background that you are from or what you are working on. Then as a group, I think also as a group, it helped us with faster learning because we were not all, and I used to say that, on the same page in our team. When we started, we had different ideas about, you know, what we needed to do and how we were going to do it, and what, for example, you know, concepts or ideas like GEI and so on meant to different people, and what the implementation should be like. And it's the same with our sub-grantees. When we have meetings now, I think at the beginning, before we started also implementing a sort of peer learning approach to, you know, workshops, activities that we did with them, there were so many questions, and, you know, it looks as if you are being told, maybe the PIs on our project or other staff, that, yeah, you brought this up, you are the expert, now tell us about it. But once we had this kind of system and we introduced it also, you could see how people were able to reflect on their own knowledge and actually say, you know, I also have an understanding of that. I do know something about that, and I can contribute to the discussion around that. So I think, again, overall for us, it's been about the fact that we could learn faster and we could take responsibility for what we know and what we need to know, you know, more. So yeah, that's how I think it's impacted us in terms of our research.
Thank you so much for that, Kemi. I think you've emphasized again the participatory approach and that need for the intentionality of it, that need for it to be an accountable process. I'd like to move to Daisy to just share with us your experiences and what impact or effect you think this has had on the processes or on the research.
Thank you. I am just listening as Kemi was speaking. To me, you know, if you put me in isolation and let me talk about gender and AI in agriculture and food systems, my thinking as an gender expert is that you are forcing this through my throat and perhaps it's only me. But the fact that you put me in the space together with somebody in the health sector, education, in lab with this and me, it gives me the environment where I'm learning that this is a responsibility of all. We need to do this. It gives you, this is a conversation that needs to be happening. It's not something we are going to pack at any point in time. So it gave me that that mentality in my mind that this should be happening every time we are trying to bring in these technologies, and where the users many times they sit on one end and the researcher is on the other end, and we want to eliminate this researcher-user divide. It should be happening in every context, and that's what one of the things the peer learning journeys made me, to see that this is our conversation for every sector. It's not just agriculture and food systems. So I find that as something very enriching, and it increases the value of embracing GI in the agriculture and food systems, because I sit around all these other sectors and they are all of them embracing the same language of inclusion, bringing those that don't have a voice. It just gives me that value about gender equality and inclusion in my own sector, just because I'm having this conversation with my peers.
Thank you so much for that, Daisy. I think the emphasis on how this is multidisciplinary and it doesn't just, exist in one sector, and how we need to deal with this as the conversations that we all should be having. I think that's a really important takeaway. I'd like to ask the panelists, considering that you've discussed the benefits of this methodology and the benefits of the peer learning journey, at what point have you seen challenges or limitations, and what are those challenges? And while you've experienced using peer learning in the AI sector, so how do you see it not working out in certain instances, or what limitations are you seeing from this methodology? I think I'll start with Kate.
Thank you for the question. So I think what the peer learning does is it helps people have the intention, and it helps in the doing of gender and inclusion integration. And it helps when you test something out and you're not sure it's worked or whatever, to speak with your peers and to be asked questions that challenge you to go further and to figure out a solution yourself. It does that. So to answer the question, what are some of the challenges and limitations? What I would say, and what I've observed, is the team needs to be ready. The people that are engaged need to be ready and open to the process. And it needs to speak to them. So there's that. I think if people aren't ready for it, it doesn't always work. And I also think there needs to be other complementary processes going on. And what I mean by that is it helps if research teams have a strategy, they have maybe some expertise in their team, they have, there's opportunities in the policy environment or with their partners, and also that they have tools to help them. And I think also other kinds of learning spaces as well, like the technical, where there's that technical focused discussion about something around gender and inclusion and AI, where it's focused on that. So that's what I'd say. I'd say that it's very powerful. But it's not one method that works. You need the combination of all these elements for real change to happen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kate. I think you've emphasized a lot of what some of the groundwork and laying the groundwork for processes like this to be successful are. I think I'd like Favor to comment next. Oh, I think you're muted. Let me just unmute you.
Hello? You can't hear
Hello.
me?
Oh, we can hear you now.
All right. I was saying that one, it takes a multidisciplinary approach. First of all, you'll need social scientists on board. There are elements of value, character, and curriculum nuances and myths, and all these things that at times we leave out. And social scientists are better honed and armed to deal with these kind of things, to see that technology absorbs them. Now, when we come to depending on the particular domain you're going to handle, I'll talk for health, you need doctors around. So the multidisciplinary approach always helps us to understand specialization and working together, how valuable it is to do that. You'll need a doctor to be the field expert, to advise, to interact with this system. Then also you have to think about the most important category. Who are the users? We always design for the users and decide what they need, not that we are designing and building what they need. We do what we think they need. So in order for you to understand what they need, a co-design approach would be great. You decide to begin with something not so much fancy, not so much top-notch, but you should have a good interface to enable the user interact with the system. And that creates ownership. First of all, you'll not have any glitch when you are implementing because the users will own. That's one. What you might have missed in the design, in your thought or thinking room, or from your critical thinkers, the users will point it out as they do this iterative interaction with the system. That is 2. 3, it has taught us that always it's not about how much fancy system is, it's about how fit does the system meet the user requirements. So in here, a rigorous approach from demographics, age disparity or segmentation, and also stratification by gender. And here gender, I'm not talking about binary sex. I'm talking all the forms of gender, looking at them in detail. That is very, very, very important. Also, if you are lucky enough that you're collecting data, it's very important to have a data acquisition and management plan. We've been always drawing a data management plan, not acquisition. And there we miss a lot of things that we find out when we are just managing the data. But I've discovered that it's very important to have a very detailed data acquisition plan and be intentional about it. So this has been a sort of a learning phase for me to put emphasis on that as a developer. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Favor. I think one big takeaway is the emphasis on the participatory approach and allowing users to be able to have ownership, which is something that typically you might see that certain interfaces are designed not necessarily with the user's experience in mind, but sort of a projected vision of what a user might need instead of using their actual participation. So thank you so much for your insights. I'd like to invite Kemi.
Yeah, I think we're talking about the challenges. So I think for me, I would like to say perhaps from the point of view of my team, and the fact that we all have, different knowledge skills. And for example, with PIs and the RAs, and I think one thing I noticed is that the PLJ kind of builds the confidence. So, for example, in Africa, there's a tendency a lot to defer to age, seniority, and things like these, even in, official work, official context. And people don't want to talk a lot or offer their perspective because they think, oh, there's somebody who is older here, or there's somebody, who is my senior or who is more knowledgeable than me. So I think that with the peer learning style, that has reduced considerably, and people could actually find their voices. That being said, it's still there's still that challenge to contend with, because we're not always dealing with just our team. We also deal with our sub-grantees and others, other stakeholders on the project. So that also happens. That's one challenge that I've noticed. Even if when you are using the peer learning approach, people are somewhat still, because of our context in Africa, the cultural dynamics and so on, you find that sometimes people just want to defer, if that's the word, to, oh, maybe they know better, or maybe you know better. So you have to very consciously and intentionally, to use the word, that has been effective in conveying this kind of, just that intentionality is a good word, for conveying this message. So the fact is now you have to actually almost make an extra effort to ensure that people who would otherwise not be saying anything, or who would want to defer to age, seniority, and so on, or other social status, you actually bring them into the conversation. So I think, yeah, for me, it's the social structure. It can also be, I think, when we talk about peer learning, the sort of different levels of knowledge, or unequal or inequality in the level of knowledge that people have. It means that if you are not careful, again, if you are not intentional, you can leave some people behind, believing that this is a discussion of conversation or learning among peers, and everyone, gets it. So I think for me, yeah, this will be the challenges that I have thought about. Yes, thanks.
Thank you so much, Kemi. I think that emphasis on intentionality, and also realizing that to be able to actually have a peer learning journey, we have to see each other as peers. And that requires a little bit of deconstructing some of these sort of social hierarchical positions that are typically in place, especially in research. Daisy?
Yes. I'm looking at one of the challenges that I see is you bring these peers together when they are dealing with the similar processes. It took me some time to really be able to understand what one hub is doing and what another hub. So we should be able to have the peers, these teams must be looking at similar processes, so that if I mention something like, let's say, design by inclusion, then this could be similar, this could be the same concept maybe for my peers. And then we start exchanging. Then you really would learn from each other so much. But if these processes you're looking at are quite different, going different directions, you may not really gain so much in the peer learning. But what I like in this case is that I started understanding the context of what the hubs, and therefore I could see how they were bringing in the GI in their area, and so that similarity would enhance the peer learning journey. It would enhance the learning in this case. So we need to be mindful whether indeed these peers seem to be in the similar, in a similar context, similar processes that they are looking at. Otherwise, it can be a big challenge if we are not having similar context. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it emphasizes the need to ground people in, a similar reality, or in the same goals when you're beginning it, and maybe not taking for granted the fact that some people might have very different ideas of what it is that you're aiming at, as opposed to others. So I'd like to ask just a quick question to the panel. Considering your experiences with the peer learning journey and peer learning, is this something that you would recommend to others working in AI development? Why and at what stage do you think it proves the most useful? I think I'll start with Kate.
Thank you for the question. So I think it's important. What we've heard today is that what the peer learning has helped with sometimes is helping people not be overwhelmed with, when you're a researcher and you're working, whether you're working in the field of education or agriculture and food systems or health, and there's this idea of integrating gender inclusion and intersectionality as part of, for instance, responsible AI. It can be very overwhelming. And I think being part of a structure like this right from the beginning, where it's helping you think about what you want to do and why, and hearing what other people are grappling with, that's what makes it helpful. So that's why I think it's important, because it helps, because people can easily just, when something's really overwhelming or you're not familiar with it, it's easy to like sideline it, right? And you have it on paper, but you haven't actually done something and you don't actually own it. And I think to integrate gender inclusion and intersectionality, it needs to be something where you have that intention and you have a vision of what you're trying to do. And I think here we've heard people really say, we don't impose AI, we have to listen to the users. We need to, there's an accompaniment, and then this idea of trying to kind of deconstruct power, both within a research team, but also as a researcher. Someone put it so well, that often it's the researcher and then the subjects, right? And there's that separation. And if you're trying to create something that's useful to the user, you can't be so far away. You actually have to sit beside them and listen to them along the way that you're developing the AI tool. So I think that PLJ is good to start really at the beginning. That's something that I've experienced, because some of the method is actually a participatory self-assessment that each individual team does, using kind of really like critical thinking and questioning, and that can help everyone on a team to listen to each other and think about it. And so I think that's really important, because then it starts that process, and hopefully it brings that kind of stimulation of, yes, as a team, we need to do this. Let's do this. This is important. And in the middle processes, often there's a kind of moving away from the PLJ, and we noticed that for the second event. And that, I think, is also because researchers are so busy in their work. They're doing the work. They're not necessarily as concerned about, how am I going to do this? Because they're now testing things out. And then by the third event, which is at the end, we noticed from my experience that if you combine it with other methodologies, and when I mean that, I mean about like we use a write shop, we use a participatory evaluation to then get the hubs to think about all the amazing work that they did and what worked and what didn't work. So I'd say it's good across the process, but particularly at the beginning and at the end of an AI-driven research project.
Thank you so much for that, Kate. I think I'll ask Favor to chime in.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think most of it has been done. I am unsaid. I don't know exactly where again I could even tackle it from. But in a nutshell, from the development perspective, yeah, it's very, very important to understand that deconstructing or trying to put a leveled platform when you are developing these technologies is key to their absorption. This is through experience on so many things that I've seen. When you are a level higher and you're trying to to attach personal importance because you're developing a solution to a challenge that is within a particular community. You always get consumed within your own ideas on perception of hierarchy or of importance. And then you lose the idea in the process. And if you'd like to answer the real challenge, it's always good to lead from behind. I call it leading from behind. Even if you're creating the idea and you know you have the solution, you might have thought you've understood, but what you might have understood may not be the correct thing that what is really needed. So you need to go out there and have that interaction. At times, do a lot of listening than talking. Have them even rubbish your work. It's healthy. And this is where at times either we lose it or we break through big. If you go there with emotions because someone is rubbishing what they are telling you, that rubbishing is not actually, I don't call it rubbishing. They're trying to tell you the bitter truth and look at the frustration. You don't look at the words they've used, but look at the frustration behind the rubbishing. When you look at that frustration, it means they also love it. They would have loved that solution, but it is not answering that need. So they get frustrated. So when you understand that frustration, and instead of you getting on another tangent of anger, you pray on it, on sorting out the frustration, you have the highest yield. That's what really I've learned all through this. Secondly, it has helped us to understand that it is not always maybe the developer or a person who is from the computer science or AI fraternity that should lead a project. I've sat on so many projects where me as a technical person, I've not led anything. And it has been okay. They are the best projects that I've ever worked for. Why? It helps me to look in the other people's eyes, understand them, and actually I always tag them as users. Users in a sense that they carry on their shoulders the responsibility and representation of the community that this particular project is going to serve. So when they get frustrated, I would feel the user's frustration and then try to go back and think. And I will not still think alone. I'll know that we are there together. So we will think together in different dimensions. I'll think as a tech, but I will think from the other end as a user. So I'll have another pair of eyes, both in the inside and in the outside. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Faber. I think a lot of that has been very illustrative of the way that we need to also reflect on how some of these tools can be useful and not really to take it in a negative way, but more instructional and helpful to move forward. I'm very mindful of time, so I'd like to quickly move to Kemi.
Okay, thanks very much. So, I mean, I would recommend the peer learning approach, particularly because of the nature of the research that we are doing on AI itself, that it's simply a complex topic, and you need so many disciplines. I think Favor mentioned that. So it just embeds too many issues, too many requiring different voices to be heard, you know, and what that does, you know, apart from the complexity of the technology itself and the kinds of voices that needs to be heard in it, I think because also peer learning breaks down, you know, the hierarchical structure that we have, whether it's within research teams or it's with, you know, between users and developers of the systems, or even the government versus researchers versus or against users and communities. So I think this kind of approach is helpful to just bring everybody to the table and ensure that whatever concerns or whatever issues they have with the technology itself can be understood within the context of this kind of learning structure. So thanks.
Thank you so much for your insights, Kemi. I think I'd like to close this off with Daisy.
Thank you. Yeah, I would recommend this to others, because for me, peer learning journeys sort of create some safe space. You know, I am not a gender specialist, and so I want to sit next to somebody who is also, you know, at my level. So it really creates that space so that my interaction in this forum, I'm so safe. You know, whatever view I have is not wrong, because the next person is also not an expert. Anyway, we get the experts that are there guiding us, but it really creates a safe space for learning, and I am allowed to make mistakes. And indeed, to me, that's great, because if I don't make mistakes, if I don't think the way I would think as somebody who is not an expert, then I will never learn. So it just created that nice, safe space for a non-gender expert to learn from others, and even to learn from the gender experts who are able to point us to some of the, you know, the challenges in our reasoning. And that I loved. Thank you, Mitchel.
Thank you so much, Daisy. And I'd just like to say a massive thank you to...
one point.
Oh, sure, Favor.
Mm-hmm. I forgot the most important thing, which even I'm doing. To me, it promotes sharing of knowledge across the aisle. It promotes that the people who are not technical, they get to understand your lot, and you get to understand where they are coming from. And even if from technical to technical, you get to understand how somebody has solved the problem. And it's the very reason why we are holding the first GEI PLJ in Hash. And I'm going to invite all of you, if you see this email, please don't hesitate to attend on 12th this month at 3 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. I'm going to give them more time in a PowerPoint presentation to prepare and share real life experiences as they walk through their development. To me, I'm trying to do this because if peer-to-peer, if them as sub-grantees share these challenges and also the solutions they've devised in the work, it's very important. They don't feel like they're being grilled or coerced, but it promotes learning because they get to know that someone else has walked through that journey. So this is all what this will be about. It won't be me to discuss. It will be them. It won't be me to ask the question. It will be them. So they will know that the other ones are coming from a point where they would like to learn. So the knowledge will be passed across. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Favor. And we're definitely looking forward to that. We'll look out for that email. Thank you so much to all the panelists that have been with us today for answering the questions and for really having amazing and incredible insights. And we will see you in the next one.